The difference between how rich people and poor people relate to money is not about intelligence, talent, or morality. It is not about who works harder or who deserves more. At its core, the difference lies in how money is mentally framed. Money itself is neutral, but the meaning we attach to it shapes how we use it and how it affects our lives. For those with a wealthy mindset, money is seen as a tool. It is something to be used to create outcomes, build systems, and open options. Money is not the end point. It is the means. It is invested, moved, and directed toward growth, opportunity, and long-term impact. Because money is viewed as functional rather than emotional, decisions around it tend to be more strategic and less reactive. For those living in scarcity, money often becomes the goal. It represents safety, relief, and freedom from constant worry. When money is scarce, it carries emotional weight. Earning it feels like survival, and losing it feels like danger. In this mindset, money is held tightly because it equals stability and peace of mind. This difference in framing quietly shapes decisions, emotions, and long-term results. One mindset asks, "What can money do?" The other asks, "Will this be enough?" And over time, those questions lead lives in very different directions. Let's see the psychological relationship with money. People rarely relate to money in a purely logical or mathematical way. Instead, money is deeply emotional. Long before anyone understands budgets, investments, or income, the brain learns what money means. It becomes associated with feelings, memories, and survival experiences. This emotional relationship is usually formed early in life and quietly follows a person into adulthood. For people who grew up with scarcity, money is often linked to survival. It represents food on the table, rent being paid, and the fear of things falling apart. In these environments, money is not abstract or flexible, it is urgent. Conversations about money may have been tense, stressful, or filled with worry. As a result, the nervous system learns to treat money as something fragile and easily lost. Even later in life, when income improves, the emotional imprint remains. Spending can trigger anxiety and saving can feel like safety, not strategy. On the other hand, people who grew up around abundance often link money to possibility. They may have seen money used as a resource rather than a lifeline. It paid for experiences, education, travel, and opportunities. Mistakes with money were uncomfortable but not catastrophic. This creates a very different emotional response. Money feels expandable, replaceable, and usable. The nervous system stays calmer around financial decisions, allowing for long-term thinking and calculated risk. What matters most is not the current income level, but the emotional blueprint formed early on. Two people earning the same amount can experience money in completely different ways. One feels constant tension. The other feels options and flexibility. Until this emotional relationship is understood, financial behavior often repeats automatically, regardless of logic, advice, or income changes. Let's talk about money as safety versus money as leverage. For many people who struggle financially, money is not just currency. It is safety. It represents food on the table, rent paid on time, dignity preserved, and a brief escape from constant anxiety. When money is tied to these basic needs, it carries heavy emotional weight. Every expense feels personal, and every loss feels dangerous. Losing money in this mindset is not just about numbers going down. It feels like losing control, stability, or even self-worth. This is why people in survival mode often focus on protecting money at all costs. Saving feels like armor, and spending feels risky. When money equals safety, the brain treats it as something that must be defended. Decisions become cautious, sometimes rigid, because the fear of loss is stronger than the hope of gain. Even opportunities that could lead to growth may be avoided if they involve uncertainty. The goal is not expansion, but protection. Peace of mind comes from holding on, not from moving forward. For wealthy thinkers, money carries a very different meaning. It is leverage. It is flexibility. It is a way to create options and influence outcomes. Money is seen as something that should move, work, and multiply. Because their sense of safety is not fully dependent on each dollar, losing money does not feel like a personal threat. It feels like a temporary inconvenience, a problem to solve rather than a crisis to survive. This emotional distance allows money to be deployed instead of protected. It can be invested, reinvested, and redirected with intention. One group guards money because it equals survival. The other uses money because it equals possibility. And over time, this difference in emotional meaning shapes not only financial outcomes, but confidence, freedom, and how life choices are made. Do you know? Short-term relief versus long-term strategy? When money is seen as the goal, thinking naturally shifts toward the short term. The main priority becomes immediate relief. Paying the next bill, covering today's needs, or easing current stress feels urgent and necessary. Decisions are made to reduce pressure right now, not because they are ideal, but because they bring quick emotional comfort. In this mindset, money functions like a painkiller. It removes anxiety for the moment, even if it creates problems later. The future feels distant compared to the intensity of the present. This way of thinking is driven by survival urgency. When the nervous system feels threatened, it narrows focus. Long-term planning becomes difficult because the brain is busy trying to stabilize the present. As a result, choices often favor speed over strategy. Opportunities that require patience, learning, or delayed rewards may be ignored because they do not solve today's problem. Relief comes first, and growth is postponed. When money is seen as a tool, the focus shifts to long-term strategy. Instead of asking, "How do I feel better right now?" the question becomes, "What system will help me later?" Wealth-oriented thinking looks at compounding, structure, and sustainability. Temporary discomfort is accepted if it leads to future stability or growth. This could mean reinvesting money instead of spending it, learning a skill instead of chasing quick income, or building systems that take time to show results. Psychologically, this difference comes down to delayed gratification versus survival urgency. One mindset is reactive, responding to stress as it appears. The other is proactive, shaping conditions before stress arrives. Over time, short-term relief keeps people stuck in cycles of urgency, while long-term strategy creates momentum. The outcomes are not random. They are the natural result of how time, stress, and money are mentally prioritized. Let's see the concept of identity and self-worth. For many people, money is not just something they have, it becomes something they are. Without realizing it, self-worth becomes tied to bank balance, income level, or financial success. When money is present, there is a sense of validation and calm. When money is missing, shame, fear, or a feeling of failure can quickly take over. Thoughts like, "If I have money, I'm okay," or "If I don't, I've failed," operate quietly in the background, shaping emotions and behavior. When identity is linked to income, financial ups and downs become deeply personal. A loss is not just a setback. It feels like a reflection of intelligence, value, or competence. This emotional attachment makes clear decision-making difficult. Fear, pride, and insecurity begin to influence choices. People may avoid risks that could help them grow, or chase quick wins just to restore their sense of worth. Money stops being a tool and starts acting like a mirror of identity. Wealth-oriented thinking creates a crucial separation between identity and income. In this mindset, money is external. It is something that flows, changes, and moves independently of personal value. A bad financial outcome does not define the person. It simply provides information. This emotional distance creates psychological safety. When self-worth is stable, decisions become calmer and more rational. Because money is no longer personal, it can be evaluated objectively. Losses are analyzed instead of feared. Gains are managed instead of celebrated blindly. This separation allows people to make strategic choices without being emotionally overwhelmed. Over time, this mindset builds resilience. Identity stays intact during financial fluctuations, and money remains what it truly is, a resource, not a measure of human worth. Next, we will talk about risk perception. Risk does not feel the same to everyone. How a person perceives risk depends largely on their baseline sense of security. It is not simply about courage or intelligence. It is about what the nervous system believes is at stake. The same financial decision can feel completely different to two people, even if the numbers are identical. For someone living with financial insecurity, risk feels like a threat to stability. One wrong move can mean unpaid bills, loss of housing, or constant anxiety. In this state, the brain is focused on protection. Risk is not exciting or strategic, it is dangerous. Even small uncertainties can trigger fear because the margin for error is thin. When survival feels fragile, the nervous system reacts quickly, pushing the person towards safer, more predictable choices. For someone with financial security, risk is perceived as a calculated variable. There is room to recover, adjust, or try again. Losses may be uncomfortable, but they are not catastrophic. This sense of safety keeps the nervous system calmer, allowing the brain to evaluate probabilities instead of reacting emotionally. Risk becomes something to measure, manage, and sometimes embrace rather than avoid. This is why the same action can produce very different responses. Investing money, starting a business, or changing careers may feel reckless to one person and reasonable to another. The difference is not the action itself, but the internal sense of safety behind it. Fear narrows thinking. It limits creativity, shortens time horizons, and pushes decisions toward immediate protection. Safety expands thinking. It allows exploration, long-term planning, and learning from mistakes. Understanding risk perception is essential, because people do not choose fear or confidence consciously. They respond to what their nervous system believes is safe, and that belief shapes every financial decision they make. How each group talks about money. The way people talk about money reveals far more than their income. Language reflects mindset, and mindset shapes behavior. Most people are not aware of how their words quietly reinforce their relationship with money. Yet those words act like mental instructions that guide decisions over time. When money is goal-oriented, the language around it often carries urgency and limitation. Phrases like, "I need money," suggest lack and pressure, as if money is something missing that must be chased. "I can't afford that" frames money as a barrier, immediately closing the door on possibility. "Money is hard to keep" implies that loss is inevitable and control is limited. This kind of language comes from a mindset focused on scarcity and protection. It keeps attention on what is not available and reinforces a sense of constraint. Tool-oriented money talk sounds very different. Instead of focusing on lack, it focuses on direction and function. Questions like, where should money go next? Treat money as an active resource that needs placement. What does this return? Shifts attention from spending to outcomes. How does this scale? Introduces long-term thinking and systems rather than one-time results. This language reflects a mindset that sees money as something to manage, not chase. Words are not just expressions. They are reflections of mental models. Repeated language shapes how the brain interprets reality. Scarcity language trains the mind to see limits everywhere. Strategic language trains the mind to look for structure, leverage, and opportunity. Over time, these patterns compound. People begin to act in alignment with how they speak, often without realizing it. In this way, language does not just describe a financial mindset, it helps create and maintain it. Let's see time horizon differences. Time feels different depending on whether someone is living in scarcity or security. When resources are limited, the mind naturally focuses on the near future. Scarcity shortens time perspective. Attention stays locked on days, weeks, or at most a few months ahead. This is not because of a lack of ambition or patience, but because immediate needs demand constant attention. When bills, food, or stability are uncertain, the future feels too abstract to plan for in detail. In a scarcity-driven mindset, decisions are shaped by what must be handled now. The brain prioritizes urgency over longevity. Long-term goals may exist, but they are often pushed aside by short-term pressures. Planning years ahead can feel unrealistic or even irresponsible when today's problems are not fully solved. The nervous system remains alert, scanning for threats and deadlines, leaving little space for extended thinking. In contrast, a wealthy mindset operates on a much longer time horizon. When basic needs are secured, the mind gains psychological breathing room. Thoughts can stretch into years, decades, and even generations. Decisions are evaluated not only by immediate outcomes, but by how they compound over time. This allows for patience, consistency, and strategic planning. Setbacks are absorbed into a larger timeline instead of treated as failures. This difference is not about willpower or discipline. It is about safety. A calm nervous system can afford to wait. It can invest time, money, and effort into outcomes that are not immediately visible. Scarcity compresses time because survival demands focus. Security expands time because the future feels accessible. Over time, these different time horizons lead to dramatically different life trajectories, even when people start with similar abilities or intentions. How people handle their emotions around money often matters more than how much money they earn. When money is seen as the goal, financial thinking becomes emotionally reactive. Every gain brings relief or excitement, and every loss brings fear, frustration, or panic. Decisions are influenced by emotional swings rather than clarity. In this state, money controls mood, and mood controls behavior. Money as goal thinking keeps the nervous system on edge. Because money is tied to safety and self-worth, even small financial changes can trigger strong emotional responses. Stress narrows attention, pushing people to act quickly just to feel better. This can lead to impulsive spending, avoidance of financial planning, or decisions driven by fear rather than logic. The emotional reaction comes first, and the strategy comes later, if at all. Money as tool thinking operates very differently. Here, emotions are acknowledged but not allowed to dominate decisions. Financial outcomes are treated as information rather than judgment. Gains are evaluated calmly, and losses are examined for lessons. This creates emotional distance, which allows for strategic thinking. Instead of reacting to what just happened, the focus shifts to what should happen next. Emotional regulation does not mean suppressing feelings. It means maintaining enough internal stability to think clearly under pressure. Wealth-oriented thinkers develop the ability to pause, assess, and respond rather than react. This skill allows them to stay consistent through uncertainty and volatility. Wealth grows more easily when emotions are regulated, not when income is higher. Many people earn well but struggle financially because emotional reactions disrupt good decision-making. Others earn modestly but build steadily because they remain calm and strategic. Over time, emotional regulation compounds just like money does. It reduces costly mistakes, increases consistency, and allows rational decisions to accumulate into long-term financial growth. Do you know why this type of thinking is hard to change? Changing the way people think about money is far more difficult than it seems. Many assume that reading books, listening to advice, or adopting a wealthy mindset will instantly transform financial behavior. But the truth is, you cannot simply think rich while your nervous system feels unsafe. Deep-seated patterns of fear, scarcity, and survival instincts guide decisions long before conscious thought has a chance to intervene. Behavior is driven first and foremost by emotional safety, not motivation. If the brain perceives a threat to survival, real or imagined choices will prioritize protection over growth. This explains why someone may intellectually understand investments, compounding, or long-term strategy, yet still avoid risk, hoard money, or make reactive decisions. The emotions tied to money are older and stronger than rational reasoning. They have been wired through childhood experiences, cultural conditioning, and repeated financial stress. Mindset advice alone often fails because it addresses only the conscious layer of thought, not the unconscious emotional patterns that actually drive behavior. Hearing a motivational statement or reading a financial strategy may feel inspiring in the moment, but without addressing underlying feelings of insecurity or scarcity, the nervous system remains on high alert. The old reactive patterns resurface under stress, and old habits persist. Real change requires more than thinking differently. It requires creating a sense of psychological safety around money. People must feel secure enough internally to tolerate risk, delay gratification, and separate their self-worth from their cash balance. Only then can behaviors align with the wealth-oriented mindset being taught. Until emotional safety is established, the cycle continues. Motivation may rise and fall, but habitual responses rooted in survival instincts will dominate, quietly steering financial choices. This is why developing a healthy, calm relationship with money is both the most challenging and the most critical step toward long-term financial growth. That's it for today. If you found value in this video, hit the like button, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to stay updated with more insights. Thanks for watching.